Hey everybody, welcome to Bura. In this episode, we're going to be talking about interning at your own company in 2020. Is it still viable? Alright, welcome back. Before we start this video, I want to make sure that you like and subscribe. If this video got 1,000 likes, it would mean the world to me and my team. Remember that this channel doesn't do a Patreon. Instead, we sell our digital products down below. The more money we get from the products that you buy below, the more content we can make. Please show your support, and if you've already purchased a product or are a subscriber to Mammoth Interactive's huge library of content, thank you so much. You make this video possible. Alright, so interning at your own company in 2020 as a developer, is it still viable? Well, I have a bit of a skewed vision of being a developer because I graduated in 2008 and there were literally no jobs. I've tried to apply to many jobs, and I usually got the you don't have enough experience so you can't get a job. That circular logic of death is really annoying, but I still see it happening today. The thing about 2020 is that while there's lots of demand for developers and companies are making lots of money, the problem with development today is that it's hard to find good developers and it's hard to get your first job because you might not have enough experience. And if you do get a job, it's probably not going to be a good job. Remember that entry-level QA jobs are not bad jobs, but you could be using your time in a different way. This is probably one of the hardest things to get used to as a young person. You're used to doing really awesome things in the last 2 years of college, and then you get to a QA job and it's terrible. Well, my company, Mammoth Interactive, has solved this a bit. I don't insult young people's intelligence, and I give them a project they can actually work on. And I wish more companies would do this. But of course, there needs to be QA, and if they're going to do it in North America or an expensive labor situation, they do need to do it at some point. If they are going to use an expensive labor situation, the companies usually have to have a good reason for this. Otherwise, they're just going to outsource it. Now that's another thing about development in 2020 is that if you are competing with developers all around the world, and sometimes $100 will go way farther in a different location than in your location. So some developer might be way better than you, willing to work for less than you, and do a better job than you, and because of that, you might not get a job in the first place. The world is a very competitive spot, and development always needs more people, so people are naturally going to go into development. So the world is still pretty competitive. So should you intern at your own company instead of getting that first QA job? Well, if you can get a QA job and work on your own side project, this is the best option. If that QA job doesn't take 60 hours a week from you, then that is a very good thing. If you can actually even work part-time, maybe 20 to 30 hours, and then work on your own spare projects, that's not a bad idea. You can also do this as a freelancer, but one of the things that I really lacked in my career is to have a really good support system of big and more experienced developers giving me feedback, and I kind of really wish I had this. So maybe getting a part-time job as a QA or whatever it is your first job is, and then working on your spare projects or your own company in your spare time might be the better option. Remember, the more projects that you release, the better you get. So you should be spending your spare time anyway on free projects, but it all depends on whether you want to build a startup or make a lot of money. And if you do want to do that, which was always my goal, then that's great. But if you just want to build projects to get better, then that's also good too. Now, if you go down this road of working part-time and then working on your spare projects, you want to find a location of work that doesn't take a long commute. There's no point in spending an hour-long commute to go to a place to work 20 hours and then commute an hour back. That's literally 10 hours a week. If you can pay more money to live in a closer location where you can perhaps walk, then that's really good. Now, of course, this is easier said than done, especially in a lot of cities. For me personally, I've always rented, and believe it or not, the best thing about renting is that you can just simply move whenever you want. If you buy a place, then you're simply locked down. So if you do find a good job, then you can simply move to an area that is closer to your job so you can maybe walk to work and then perhaps walk back, and then you save a bunch of time. Remember, 10 hours each week of development time could be a lot. That's 40 hours a month. Now, if you commute a lot, then you are wasting quite a bit of time. So you have to really budget that into it. Now, of course, you can make your commute more productive, like listening to podcasts, etc. And if you drive to work, then it's a much more comfortable situation. If you do want to commute, the best thing you can do is bike to work. Now, this is of course easier said than done. It's hard to bike in the snow, although a fun fact, in university, that's exactly what I did. I lived in a very snowy region, and I, believe it or not, biked to work year round. and all the professors and all my peers thought I was crazy. But I did it anyway. So if you can bike to work, you are solving two problems at once. The problem is A, getting to work, and B, exercise. Because biking to work is great exercise, and you'll probably find yourself in better shape. Now, believe it or not, in 2008 and 2009, a lot of employers did not really look at spare time projects as something that's viable. And nowadays, a lot of employers do. Some don't. It depends on the business, but most of them will look at a developer and say, hey, look, this person's doing development in their spare time. Obviously, they're going to be better than the person who isn't. The person that is, let's say, playing video games or doing a bunch of other things in their spare time and not developing is going to be worse off in the long run. So we should probably hire the person that's doing development in their spare time. So when I went to a lot of interviews in 2008 and 2009, there was a lot of hiring managers that simply did not care. And I'm glad to say that this has changed. And I'm very surprised that they didn't care so much about the spare projects that I was working on. I basically told them, it's like, look, I spend most of my time developing anyway, and you probably want to hire me because I'm more driven than everybody else. And the answer, and the reason why they probably didn't want to hire me is that sometimes a person who's very entrepreneurial might not fit into the business culture. Again, that was a long time ago, and business changes now. Today, if you want to work for Tesla, you don't even need a high school degree. You just need to be able to do the job. And more businesses are falling within that line. And it's a good thing because when you think about it from the business point of view, the business says, can this person do this job? If the answer is yes, then you should hire them. Why do you need all these degrees and other things around it? Now, of course, this is not medicine or anything that requires a lot of certification. If you're a good developer, you will get a job. But the thing is that if you're a good developer, are you going to get the most money from your job or from your own startup? And this is the question that you also have to ask yourself. So the last thing I have to mention is that if there is a recession, then interning at your own company is going to be a necessity versus just something that is done by most people, because a lot of people can lose their jobs and a lot of developers can lose their jobs because in a recession, the startup that you're working for might not get the next funding round. A lot of startups are only in existence today because they're getting more funding. In fact, if some of these startups didn't receive more series of funding, they would probably go under. So if there is a recession and if there is any kind of credit or liquidity crunch, then you will see a lot of startups going under. And that startup might be the startup that you are working for. And startups can be anything from just something like a 3-person team to something that has received maybe 150 million in funding. The 150 million funding in company that you're probably working for could go out of business because, again, a recession is like that. People just lose their jobs. And you can be really smart and really talented and still lose your job anyway because, again, it's a recession. Even doctors and things that people really, really need, they have a hard time in a recession too. Everybody has a hard time. So in the next recession, then perhaps interning at your own company might be a necessity. And if you get in the habit of doing projects in your spare time and perhaps interning at your own company right now, then you'll be very prepared for the next recession. So is it worth interning at your own company in 2020? Well, I would say the answer is yes, but there's a few caveats to that. You might make a lot more money just working full-time for a developer firm. In that case, this might be a good thing to do on your spare time, just making a few projects here and there. If you really want to be an entrepreneur and you really want that startup idea, then I highly recommend working part-time and trying to reduce your commute to as little as possible. This is something that I've done, and this is something that I'd highly recommend that you do as well. Remember that if you are making a startup in your spare time, that is very risky. So again, you have to balance your risk level versus what you want to do and how much money you want to make. Alright, so that concludes this video. I want to make sure that you like and subscribe. The more subscribers we get, the more content we can make. It might not mean a lot to you, but if this video got 1,000 likes, it would mean the world to me. Also, this channel doesn't do a Patreon. Instead, we sell our digital products down below. The more money we get from the products that you buy below, the more content we can make. If you really like this channel, you can subscribe to Mammoth Interactive's huge library of content. We have everything from web development to machine learning to game development to 3D modeling to Photoshop to everything. We produce 20 to 60 hours of fresh new content per month. If we can get to 10,000 paid monthly subscribers, our e-learning company can change the world. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in another video.